So I would say what truth
Don't
you're
look.
actually
The
latching on
prices
to
outside aren't any better.
is, and I'm going to say this as well, there's an element of the approach that the left is using towards the right wing. It's not working or it's not good enough. And we got to change our approach to the right wing.
This field?
And one the person that's kind of like latched on to this truth fairly early on is Cenk Uygur. So because of that, I've been changing my approach towards the right wing. And in order to think about how to deal with the right wing, we can't be highly emotional. We can't be uber emotional when it comes to dealing with the right wing. We've got to be harsh and vicious, but and on point or whatever. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that we keep our cool, that we're level-headed, so we can think logically in how to approach them. If trans people can't compete in their desired sport, then what are you going to do to kind of like break the news to them? Right? And is there any counter ideas? Like if they can't compete when they compete in their desired sports, is there something else we can, like opportunities we can create for them to do something else instead? If you don't want to allow trans people to go into the bathrooms that they identify with, what are you going to do then? Then where do the trans people go? Because you can't put them in the bathrooms that they're assigned with, because if they go in like a man's bathroom looking like a woman, they can face abuse and stuff like that. You can't put them. So you're saying they can't go in the women's bathroom because the women won't like it. So what you're going to do then? You got to think about you got to think of some way to a counter thing to kind of like break the news and offer something else instead. Like, are you going to advocate for, advocating for what's it called, gender neutral bathrooms instead? Like building more gender neutral bathrooms. Because that way, then, well, if you can't go in this desired place, so instead you can go into this gender neutral bathroom instead. What else is there? Prisons. If the trans women can't go into the prisons that they identify with, then they can't go into the prisons, the gender they're assigned with birth, because they can face abuse. What are you going to do then? Are you going to like segregate them? Like wherever they go, whether it's the women's prison, whether it's the men's prison, they would have to be segregated then to protect the trans people. So if they can't go into the prison that they assign with, then are you going to like find somewhere else to imprison these prisoners, like segregated from the other populace and stuff or something? So just like if you want to show good faith in with the trans debate, then you should be offering like counter things. Like if trans people can't do this, that, or this, then they can do this, that, and this instead of of those things that I've previously said. And when it comes to like the trans treatment for like teenagers, well, if you're not allowing them to go on puberty blockers, then what are you going to do instead? Like, are you going to allow them to, like for instance, if you're going to stop trans children from going through like puberty blockers or gender what's it called? Puberty blockers, yeah. If you're not going to allow them to go on puberty blockers, if you're not going to allow them to go through treatment, what are you going to do instead? Are you going to so like, if they're not allowed to do that as teenagers, then are you going to allow them to just socially transition? They can't biologically transition, like doing something biologically. Are you going to allow them to socially transition? Because you can't just be like, well, they can't go through this treatment, and we're not going to allow you to socially transition neither. You can't get rid of one thing without allowing another. If you're going to not allow them to go through the treatment, then they should be able to, well, either be allowed to socially transition, which is dress and look they want to look, or are you going to offer like mental health support that if you're not going to allow them to like socially transition, are you going to give them like mental health support? So like as they're a teenager, you can actually help them to cope with whatever emotions they're going through. And then when they're a fully grown adult, then when they're like 21 and older, then it's their body, their choice, because they're no longer um, at the wishes of the parents. So just like if you're not going to allow them to transition as a teenager until they're a fully grown adult, then are you going to allow them to either socially transition, or are you going to offer them mental health support to help them with not being able to transition the way they want to? Because you can't just decide neither. You can't just be like, sports, prisons, and bathrooms. I'm sorry, but it's a no, and just say tough. And then, even then, the very least you can do is actually be sorry about it. It's like, oh, sorry, but it's not safe. But you don't tend to have an approach that you want to be sorry. Another thing I thought of was when it comes to like women's sports. Well, if the trans people if they can't compete in physical contact sports, what about non-contact sports? What if they're not, if you, when it comes to allowing them to compete in sports, what you could do is in non-contact sports where there's no physical risk, what you could do then is you can, instead of just taking the medals and the trophies away from trans people, what you can do is you can. So my idea is it's like it's what I call a rainbow gold, a rainbow silver, or a rainbow bronze. So for instance, if a trans person comes in third place, and then the female in fourth place misses out on the third place trophy or the fourth place bronze medal, what you do instead is you give the trans people a rainbow bronze, and then you give the woman in fourth place a normal bronze. So that way, trans people can at least compete in non-contact sports. So just like you got to think of these counter ideas, like if they're not going to be able to do what they want in sports, prisons, and bathrooms, what are you going to allow them to do instead? Because you can't just be like, well, you can't do anything whatsoever, tough crap, and just not create any counter ideas. You can't do that. You got to do something. It's reminding me of this thing where just like when it comes to universal credit in the UK, you can't just get rid of something and just get rid of it. You got to get rid of something and then replace it with something better. And the same thing applies with the trans experience when it comes to sports, prisons, bathrooms. If they can't do this, that, and this, what are you going to allow them to do instead? Is it going to be gender neutral bathrooms? Is it going to be segregated in prisons? Is it going to be having extra medals for the trans people? If they're not going to be able to do the biological things, are you going to allow them to socially transition? Or are you going to offer them mental health support if they're not allowed to socially transition? So you can't just do nothing. You've got to do something. Because you've got to prove that you're good faith and actually care about people. And to inspire good faith, if the right wing was good faith when it comes to the gender treatment, they would be wanting to make the gender treatment as safe as possible. But instead, they just want to be like, oh, we just want to ban everything. Well, you can't just ban everything because it makes you look like an extremist. You know, you've got to yeah, if you truly cared about teenagers, if you cared about children, you wouldn't just be banning the treatment. You would be for wanting to make the treatment as safe as possible. Because if the right wing was like, oh well, we don't want to ban this stuff, we just want to make sure that the treatment is as safe as possible and people aren't being pushed to do things they don't want to do. And we actually do care about the safety of children, and therefore we don't just want to ban it. We actually just want to make it safer. But they don't try to deal with the problem in a realistic way, in a fair way that 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 shows that they're thinking about these problems in good faith. And like I said, you can't just be for banning things. You got to create, if they can't do something, you got to create counter ideas, and that's how you show your good faith. And when it comes to like I said, with the biological treatment, you can't just ban it. You should be about wanting to make it safer. That is the good faith position for conservatives, is wanting to make sure this treatment is as safe as possible, and that trying to do whatever it takes to lower the potential for like malpractice in the medical field, because and like it's critique is important to make the medical treatment safer. And I want to stop it there because my brain's beginning to turn to mush, going on too long. So I'll try to cover this other stuff that I'm trying to think about, but I can't do it at the moment. So anyway.